So this is version 7.8 that I'm working on at the moment. I'm going to spend the next few weeks working on it and then release it on New Year's Day probably. Obviously for this version I've removed all the Christmas orientated things and be turning the air bridge back to its original texture. I've just left a bit of snow on there at the moment, but that's going to be removed. So gonna just show you the things that I'm working on at the moment. It's all running really smoothly. I'm recording on OBS, so on earlier versions I had difficulty recording, and now there's no problem. So one thing that I think I've almost 100% fixed is the flickering glass in the satellite. I still had the problem, even though I discovered that I had two of these models of the satellite duplicated on top of each other, which never helps. That may have been a recent thing. So I removed the duplicate model, and I still found that the glass was flickering. So what I did is I went into the model, and these glass areas were two. You had a lower glass tube, you had a lower glass section and an upper glass section. So what I did is deleted the upper glass and just extended the lower glass through to the top. So now this is one pane of glass just going through this divider, and I moved the divider out a bit, and now it looks like it's completely fixed. I'm not getting any flickering, so that's a good result. I'm also working on a little bit of an interior for the satellite, just arranging. It's not finished at all, but I'm just trying to arrange these chairs and get a bit more texture going in here. That's a work in progress. Moving on, I'm going to go all the way down to the uniform stands to start with. So I've added a bit more detail over the whole airport. This is a new model of fixed ground power. If you go to Google Earth, you'll see that there's two main types of fixed ground power through the airport. You'll see a yellow one, and then you'll see a white colour if you zoom right in on Google Earth. So this is a new model, and there's a few new things that I've added. So this is looks like cable, but in fact it is just a cylinder with a normal map corrugation, which makes it look like it's cable. And also this huge bunch of cable here is the same thing. It's just a hollowed out cylinder, so a tube, and with a normal map and a few torus rings, and then I added some extra cables, which is a blender spin tool. So I put some small cylinders here, and I use the spin tool to propagate out a couple of lengths. So if I go to wireframe mode, you'll see all the mesh areas. So this lower section's got hardly any mesh. The torus has a bit more mesh, and these little sections, which I did with the blender tool, has the most mesh. If I reduce the mesh any more, it will start looking jagged, but so it's a bit more efficient. It's cut down the file size compared to the normal GPU, the yellow versions. These sections are decimated and smoothed, so I think that the file size of this model is just over 1 megabyte, which is not too bad at all. These barriers do look quite a lot of mesh to it. I'm gonna go back into the project and try and cut this down more, because that's too much mesh. I thought I'd already done it, but it looks like it's not. So I'm in the SDK now, and having a look at these barriers, they don't look like I've optimized them at all. But when I look in the Blender project, I have optimized them. So obviously what I've done is that I've optimized the project, but I haven't exported it into the SDK, into the package. So that's a mistake that I've picked up on now. So these are now decimated and optimized. I could probably do a bit more optimization. Don't think I've even applied the optimization, so that's even worse. So let's bump it up to 10. The trouble is, if you bump it up too much, you start seeing the edges becoming polygoned, but the actual rounded sections are smooth, but then you start seeing polygon, like jagged edges. So I might leave that at 5-degree angle and highlight all. Find the model I've named as barrier single. And then we'll see what happens in the SDK. Okay. That hasn't shown anything in the SDK. So that means that they are optimized. And for some reason it looks like there's mesh in these top areas, but actually in the Blender project there's no lines, so it must be the render engine joining up joining these up. So it's not a problem. Looking at the model lib, barrier single is just 20 kilobytes, so that's nothing, and the larger sections are 35 kilobytes, so that was a bit of a waste of time, but it's always good to check. So these are optimized. They're not overly optimized because I don't want to see jagged polygon lines on the edges. So that's okay. So I'm not gonna if I was to build the project, save scenery, then build project, it's always a good idea to close the Blender file, even though there's not any custom textures on this, but it's possible when you go to build the file, because Blender locks the textures. It's like a file protects the textures while it's working in a project. You're always better off closing Blender down before you build the package, otherwise you'll end up with loads and loads of texture errors. It doesn't cause a problem the next time you build the package, or even it just doesn't seem to cause a problem if I was just to put it into the community folder with all the texture errors. Doesn't seem to affect anything, but I think it can do when you have got PBR textures. You'll end up getting shimmering effects even in the built package. So basically, if you've got Blender open, it right protects the textures, and my textures, the textures that I'm using, are in the package folder texture, whereas probably the better way would be to have a separate folder for the working textures. But for some reason I've put all the texture library is in my Gatwick project texture folder. That's probably the wrong way to do it, but that's the way I've done it. So anyway, I'm gonna come back in a few minutes when I've restarted the package. Okay, I'm back in the same place as before, and the package is now in the community folder. So I'm just gonna go a bit deeper into how I made the cable look like real cable. So in the Blender project, if you see this is just a basic cylinder with hardly any mesh, and in the texture area I've got the corrugated colour, which is just a plain colour of this orangey colour, and the corrugated normal. So if I delete that, you can see it's just the basic colour. And looking in the UV editor, you can see that I've just changed the UV mapping, so it creates lots of an appearance of cable, so like a roll bunch of cable. So that's a pretty good thing that I've discovered. So when you look at Google Earth, on the uniform taxiway stands, the GPUs have the control boxes separated for some reason. It's the only part of the airport where it's that situation. Another thing I've done, where you've got a triple split stands like this one, I've put the M-stop boards in one point and simplified the left and the right stands. So the total size of the files, the model files, is going to be reduced, because originally I had the stop signs on the single left and right sides. So this is about 300 or 400 kilobytes. The model lib, this is about 120 and the other one's 120, so you're looking at 4, 5, 6, 50. Whereas before, I'm saving a couple of hundred kilobytes by doing that, and it's just a bit more realistic. So this is the same situation all the way down the stands here, where you've got triple split stands. I've got the right configuration. So if I head over to the 170s, I've now replaced these bar sign posts. I've got the mesh down better, and I've put a M-stop sign on each one, which it should be, and I've also put in this area, it's the yellow type of GPU. So we've got the GPUs, and there's a triple split stand, there's a single stand. So the whole lot, even the 150s, I've got the new type of. So these are a little bit more of a file size because of this part here, but it's worth doing. I think they're about 120 kilobytes now. Same on the 150s. And here I did this one before, but looking at Google Earth, I've pretty much got the right type of, whether it's a yellow or a white or a double or a single, pretty much done the whole airport now. So this area, I've going to have a look and see how this looks, because these stand plates, I've now changed them to a slightly higher quality, and I'm just checking if they're flush against. Not too bad, it's nearly there, but these are a higher quality stand plate. They're not too bad with performance at all. Bit of smoothing on here. You can even get right up to the bolts. So these have all been demeshed and auto smoothed a little bit. You can see a few polygons there because I've demeshed it quite a lot. So the wireframe model doesn't look too bad. This is a little bit, I have demeshed the cable, but performance is not a problem. these have all been auto smoothed, so you can't see any polygons now. That was in an earlier update. So I'm just doing a few of these stands, just checking to see. Pretty close. I'll go in again to the SDK and move them a bit closer. Not all of them. I'll probably do a few more, especially these ones. These are like lollipop stick versions. And do some of these later on. I've got a couple of chocks there that need to be snapped to ground. There's quite a few there, so I need to get that done. Hopefully there's not any more. Let's check the others. That's good to see. Everything's snapped to ground. So those ones I need to redo. They were probably like that in 7.7. Yeah, everything's snapped to ground. Just finding. So this, I've cleared most of the Christmas stuff already for this version. Just need to reset the bridge. So 7.8 is progressing. I'm going to try and change all this grid work to a texture to cut down on the mesh, and I have actually moved this whole lot out. It was too far that way, and I've moved it further to the west, because when you look at the Bing map you can see that I had it far too close to this building, so it doesn't make much difference, but so that's the main task, is to get these, all the stands GPU'd up, and probably might leave like these like this at the moment on the 60s, but the triple split stands, I think they have got a emergency stop post separate, and these are more of a simpler type. And there's one M stop post here with a triple stop. The things I'm planning to do is get this sorted out down here. This is to change it into corrugated. This is modelled. I'm going to do the whole lot as a texture. Get this one redone, this pier. See if I can get that as a texture. And lots of things. That's it for now.